Hey everyone, welcome back to Effective English Learning. I'm Mia.
And I'm James. Lovely to have you with us today.
James, tell me if this sounds familiar. It's 10 o'clock at night, you're tired, and you think, what did I actually do today?
Painfully familiar. You were busy from morning to night, and yet nothing important got finished.
Exactly that. So today, we're talking about how to manage your time properly and realistically.
And I want to say something surprising right at the start. You don't have a time problem.
We don't? Because I'm fairly sure I do.
Everyone gets the same 24 hours. The busiest person you admire has exactly the hours you have. So it isn't the amount of time. It's what we let those hours be filled with.
So it's not a time problem, it's a choices problem.
And that's oddly good news. A shortage of hours would be hopeless. A pattern of choices can be changed this week.
So the fix isn't finding a secret extra hour. It's noticing what I'm already doing with the ones I have.
A choices problem and a system problem, and happily, both can be fixed. Today, we'll walk through the real skills, where your hours actually go, how to protect the good ones, and how to say no.
And I imagine we'll use English study as our example throughout.
Perfect example, because it's the thing everyone means to do and never finds time for. But everything today works for anything you care about.
And there's a phrase for that feeling of never having enough time, isn't there?
There is. To be pressed for time. It means you're rushed. You don't have enough time. Sorry, I'm a bit pressed for time this morning.
Pressed for time. That's exactly how modern life feels, squeezed.
So let's unsqueeze it. By the end of this, you'll know exactly where your hours are hiding.
And no, we won't promise you a 4-hour work week.
Certainly not. Just honest, usable skills. Let's get into it.
Before we dive in, if you enjoy these chats, please tap subscribe. It's free and it helps more learners find us.
And a quick like really does help. Thank you. It means the world to us.
So, James, where do we start? What's the first real skill?
The time audit. Before you manage your time, you have to know where it actually goes, and almost nobody knows.
What does an audit involve? It sounds official.
It's beautifully simple. For 3 days, write down what you do and roughly how long it took. Not perfectly, just honestly. Woke up, phone for 40 minutes. Commute, 1 hour. Lunch, then scrolling for another 30.
40 minutes on the phone before I'm even out of bed? That's uncomfortably accurate.
It's uncomfortable for everyone, but that discomfort is the point. You cannot manage what you've never measured.
So, people don't lack hours, they lack awareness of where the hours drain away.
Exactly. Most people discover 1 or 2 hours a day they genuinely didn't know they had. Not free time, invisible time. It was there all along, quietly leaking.
And what do we do once we find those hours?
You don't have to eliminate them, just reclaim a piece. Take 20 minutes back and put something you love in it. Your English, a book, a walk.
So I'm not trying to be perfect, I'm just rescuing 20 minutes from the leak.
20 minutes a day is over 2 hours a week. Nobody thinks they have 2 spare hours, but almost everybody has 20 leaking minutes.
2 hours a week hiding in plain sight? That's remarkable.
And here's a lovely phrase for that: to make time for something. It doesn't mean finding spare time, because spare time doesn't exist. It means deliberately creating it.
To make time, so I have to build it, not find it.
Precisely. People say, I don't have time for English. What they mean is, I haven't made time. And that's a completely different, much more hopeful sentence.
So, step 1, look honestly at your 3 days and make time on purpose.
And now, the thing that makes some of those hours far more valuable than others.
Not all hours are equal? An hour is an hour, surely.
On a clock, yes. In your brain, absolutely not. An hour at your sharpest is worth 3 at your most exhausted.
Oh, that's so true. I can read the same page 4 times at 11 at night and take in nothing.
If we all can. So the skill isn't managing time, it's managing energy. Notice when you're naturally sharp and guard that window fiercely.
And how do I find my sharp window?
Your audit tells you. Most people have 1 or 2 hours a day when thinking feels easy. For many, it's mid-morning. For others, it's late at night. There's no right answer, only your answer.
And then I put my hardest thing there.
Your hardest, most important thing. speaking practice, difficult work, the task you keep avoiding. Never spend your best hour on email.
So I've been giving my best hours to my easiest tasks. That's backwards.
Almost everybody does. And the reverse matters too. Put the easy, mindless jobs in your tired hours. Tidy, wash up, listen to a podcast. Low energy, low demand.
So there's no such thing as a wasted hour, only an hour matched to the wrong task.
That's beautifully said. Match the task to the energy, and suddenly your day has twice the capacity with no extra minutes at all.
And what about people who work shifts or have small children and their good hours simply belong to someone else?
Then you work with what's left, honestly and kindly. 10 tired minutes still count. This isn't about the perfect schedule, it's about being deliberate with whatever you actually have.
Protect your best hour, give your worst hours the easy jobs.
And notice how kind that is to yourself. You stop demanding brilliance from an exhausted brain at 11 at night.
So I forgive my tired hours instead of fighting them. That's a relief, honestly.
Now, the distinction that quietly runs everybody's life.
The distinction that runs our lives? Go on.
Urgent versus important. They feel like the same thing, and they are completely different.
Define them for me.
Urgent things shout. A ringing phone, a message, someone at the door. They demand a response right now. Important things whisper. Your health, your English, a relationship, a dream. They never shout, so they wait forever.
Oh, that's it, isn't it? The urgent things aren't important, and the important things aren't urgent.
That's the trap in one sentence. So we spend our lives answering the loud things and neglecting the ones that actually shape us.
Because nobody ever sends me an urgent message saying, your English practice is due.
Nobody ever will. Your future self can't email you, so you have to protect the important things yourself on purpose before the urgent things fill the day.
So how do I actually do that?
Do the important thing first, before the day gets loud. 20 minutes of what matters before you open your messages. Once the urgent floods in, the important never gets a turn.
So the order of the day matters more than the length of it.
Enormously. And there's a lovely phrase for taking on too many things at once: to spread yourself too thin.
To spread yourself too thin. So doing so many things that you do none of them well?
Exactly. Like butter over too much bread. Choose fewer important things and give them real hours. 2 things done properly beats 10 things touched briefly.
So chase the whispers, not the shouts.
And every so often ask yourself a hard question. Is this urgent thing genuinely mine to do? Many shouting tasks belong to someone else entirely.
So some of my busiest hours are spent inside other people's emergencies.
And now we make the whispers an appointment.
Quick reminder before we go on. If this is helping, drop a comment with the word hours. We read every one, and it tells us to keep making these.
Just one word, hours. Go on, we'll see it.
So, making the important things an appointment, what does that mean?
It's called time blocking, and it's the single most powerful habit here. Instead of a to-do list, you give every important task an actual time in your calendar.
What's wrong with a to-do list? I love my lists.
Lists are lovely, but they're wishes. A list says sometime. A calendar says Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Only one of those ever actually happens.
Oh, so my to-do list is really a list of things I hope a future version of me will handle.
And she's very busy, that future version. So instead, English, 7 to 7:20, Tuesday. Now it exists. It has a home in the day.
And I treat it like a real appointment, not a suggestion.
Exactly. You wouldn't skip a doctor's appointment because you didn't feel like it. Give your important things that same respect.
How long should a block be?
Shorter than you think. 25 or 30 minutes is perfect. Long blocks look frightening and get canceled. Short blocks get done and often run over happily.
So a small block is more likely to happen and often gives me more anyway.
Every time. And leave gaps between blocks. A day packed to the edges collapses the moment anything runs late. Breathing room isn't wasted time. It's what makes the plan survive real life.
So a realistic plan beats an ambitious one because the realistic one actually happens.
And plan tomorrow tonight, 5 minutes before bed.
You wake up with the decisions already made, and mornings stop being a negotiation.
So my tired evening self can quietly protect my fresh morning self. I love that.
That's the whole art of it. Now, how to defend those blocks from everybody else.
Defending my time. This is the hard one for me, honestly.
It's the hard one for almost everyone, because here's the truth nobody says out loud. Every yes is a no to something else.
Ooh, say that again.
Every time you say yes to something, you're quietly saying no to whatever you'd have done with those hours. Saying yes to a meeting is saying no to your practice. The choice is happening whether you notice it or not.
So I'm already saying no to my important things just accidentally.
Accidentally and constantly. So the skill is choosing your no's deliberately and kindly.
And how do we say no without feeling awful?
Warmly, briefly, and without a long excuse. I'd love to, but I can't this week. That sounds lovely. Not this time. You don't owe anybody a paragraph.
And no big explanation because explanations sound like an invitation to negotiate.
Beautifully understood. A short, warm no is far kinder than a reluctant yes you resent later. And there's a useful phrase, to have your hands full.
To have your hands full. So to be very busy with no room for more.
Exactly. I'd love to help, but I've got my hands full at the moment. It's honest, it's gentle, and it's completely acceptable.
So a kind no protects the yeses I've already made to myself.
And if a flat no feels too hard at first, offer a smaller yes. I can't do all of it, but I could help for 20 minutes.
So there's a gentle middle path for those of us who find no almost impossible to say.
That's the sentence I want everyone to remember. Guarding your time isn't selfish. It's how you keep the promises you made to your own life.
No warmly, so you can say yes to what matters.
Now, a trick that gives you back an hour you didn't know you were losing.
An hour I didn't know I was losing. Where is it going?
Into switching. Every time you jump from one type of task to another, your brain pays a small tax. 5 minutes of email, then work, then a message, then work again.
So the jumping itself costs time, not just the tasks.
Enormously. Each switch costs focus, and it takes minutes to settle back in. Do that 30 times a day, and you've lost hours to nothing but bouncing.
So what's the fix?
Batching. Group similar tasks and do them together in one go. All your emails at 11, all your phone calls at 4, all your errands on one trip. One mode, one stretch.
So instead of 10 little visits to my inbox, I make one proper visit.
And it feels dramatically calmer. Your brain settles into one shape and stays there. Batching is the difference between a day that flows and a day that rattles.
Can I batch my English practice too?
You can batch anything. Do all your listening on the commute, all your speaking while you cook, all your reviewing before bed. Same tasks, grouped, and suddenly they take less out of you.
So the work is the same, but the exhaustion is less.
And batching gives you something precious, a finished feeling. 10 scattered emails feel endless. One email session feels complete.
So I get to end the task instead of carrying it around all day.
Because the exhaustion was never the work, it was the bouncing. And a small note, this is also why just checking your phone for a second is never a second.
It's a second, and then it's 20 minutes, and I don't know how I got there.
The great mystery of modern life, which brings us neatly to protecting your focus.
Protecting focus. This feels like the hardest skill of all now.
It's the rarest, certainly, because focus isn't something you have, it's something you defend, and the world is designed to interrupt it.
So how do we defend it?
Make 1 hour a day sacred. Phone in another room, not face down on the desk, in another room, notifications off, door closed if you have one task, no switching.
Another room? That feels extreme.
It feels extreme, and it's the single thing that works. A phone on the desk steals attention even when it's silent, because a part of your mind is always waiting for it.
So even a quiet phone is costing me something. That's a little unsettling.
Try it once and see. Most people are genuinely shocked by how much clearer their thinking feels within 10 minutes.
So the proof isn't in believing it, it's in doing it once and noticing.
It genuinely is. And the beautiful thing is, one truly focused hour will outperform 4 distracted ones. You'll finish early and feel oddly calm.
And if someone can't manage a whole hour?
Then take 25 minutes, set a timer, work with total focus, then rest for 5. That little rhythm is famous because it works. Short, protected sprints beat long, leaky hours.
And is there an English phrase about working without stopping?
There's round the clock, meaning all day and all night without stopping. They worked round the clock to finish it. Though, honestly, that's a warning, not a goal.
Working round the clock is not the aim of this episode.
Quite the opposite. One protected hour and then go and live your life.
And now the honest part, because no system survives a real week, does it?
Never. The child gets sick, the train is late, work explodes, your beautiful plan meets Tuesday, and Tuesday wins.
And I think that's where people give up. One broken day and the whole system feels pointless.
That's exactly where they quit. So let's set the expectation properly. You are not aiming to control your time. You're aiming to steer it, most days, roughly.
Steer it, not control it. That's much gentler.
And gentleness is what makes a system last. A harsh plan gets abandoned, a forgiving one gets kept for years.
So being kind to my plan is actually how I stay consistent with it.
And far more accurate. Some weeks you'll manage 60% of your plan, and that is a triumph. The plan isn't a test you fail, it's a direction you keep returning to.
And what should someone do after a truly broken week?
In nothing dramatic. Don't rebuild the whole system, don't punish yourself. Just look at tomorrow. Block one important thing and do it. One block rebuilds the habit.
So the recovery is small, not heroic.
Always small. And remember what all of this is actually for. Managing your time isn't about squeezing more work into a life. It's about protecting the things that make the life worth having.
So the goal of good time management is really more time for what I love.
That's the entire point, and it gets forgotten. You're not building a more efficient machine. You're buying back hours for your people, your health, your quiet, and the things you dream about.
Manage the hours so the hours can be yours.
Beautifully said. Now let's gather it all up.
All right, let's pull it all together. James, where do we begin?
With honesty. Do a 3-day time audit because you can't manage what you've never measured. And remember, you don't find time, you make it.
And the skills themselves?
Match tasks to your energy because your best hour is worth 3 tired ones. Chase the important, not the urgent. The important things whisper, so protect them first, and give every important task a real time in your calendar in short blocks.
And how do we defend those blocks?
Say no warmly and briefly, because every yes is a no to something else. Batch similar tasks instead of bouncing between them, and protect one deep hour with your phone in another room.
And when it all falls apart?
Steer, don't control. 60% is a triumph. After a broken week, block one thing tomorrow and simply begin again.
And today's handy phrases?
To be pressed for time, to make time for something, to spread yourself too thin, to have your hands full, and round the clock.
And one last little language treat?
A language treat that differs across the ocean. In Britain, a fortnight means 2 weeks. I'll see you in a fortnight. In America, you'd simply say 2 weeks. Same time, one lovely extra word.
A fortnight. I'm using that tomorrow.
And the one big idea, if you forget everything else, you don't have a time problem. You have a protection problem. Decide what matters, give it an hour, and defend it.
So here's our question for you, and we really do read every comment.
What's the one important thing you'll block into your calendar this week, and at exactly what time? Tell us below. Be specific.
And if this helped, a like, a subscribe, and a share with a friend who's always pressed for time would mean the world to us.
So go and look at tomorrow, find one good hour, and give it to something that matters.
Because the time is already yours. You just have to claim it. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.